Hi, my name is Ishaan, and my project is looking at current neuromuscular training, warm-up practices in youth field hockey. Injuries are a part of competitive youth sports, including field hockey, a sport where there are 30 million players worldwide and 137 national associations. Within Canada, we have almost 18,000 players, with almost half of that population competing at the high school level. Unfortunately, there are high rates of subsequent injuries within youth field hockey players compared to other youth sports, and these injury rates are doubling as players progress from youth to recreational to elite levels of play. Fortunately, neuromuscular training or NMT warm-up programs are an effective way to minimize injuries in youth sports. They've been shown to reduce the risk of lower extremity injuries by almost 35%. An NMT warm-up program will consist of four components: aerobic, balance, strength, and agility. And they're typically performed prior to a game or a practice with the aim of training the central and peripheral nervous system and muscles to react and communicate together during sport. During these exercises, there's a focus on dynamic muscle control to enhance joint stability. So the research question we wanted to ask ourselves is, what do current warm-up practices within Canadian youth field hockey teams entail? And two, how do these warm-up practices change as athletes progress from recreational to more competitive levels of play? The objective was to describe and quantify these practices, these warm-up practices, particularly within male and female teams at three different levels of competition: high school, local youth, and provincial high performance. And it's really important to meet this objective because of another ongoing project, which is looking to create an NMT warm-up program for Canadian field hockey players specifically. But since there's minimal literature specific to field hockey in North America, the findings from this study are so important in being able to evaluate the effectiveness of the NMT program after it's been implemented. So we started by recording pre-game warm-up sessions for male and female teams at three different levels of competition. We then went on to create a coding panel on a software called Dartfish, which is a video and data analysis tool. Lastly, we analyzed this footage to record the type of exercises, NMT component classifications, sets, repetitions, distances, duration of every exercise session, and the time devoted to each exercise. Now, we were aware that not all the exercises teams would perform would fit into the four NMT components. Hence, we added components to our coding panel to make it more inclusive for all the exercises observed during data collection. These included static stretching exercises, sport-specific exercises, and dynamic and mobility exercises. In our results, we noted that teams were spending about 14 minutes and 50 seconds on warm-up sessions. Female teams were doing about 14 exercises every session, and males were performing about 16 exercises every session. And the average time that female teams were spending on NMT components at different levels of competition were as follows. Youth league teams were doing about 1 minute on NMT components. High school teams were spending about 1 minute and 55 seconds on NMT components, and high performance teams were spending about 6 minutes and 10 seconds on NMT components. These two graphs here show the proportion of warm-up time devoted to different components in male and female teams, with red bars showing NMT components and the gray bars showing the additional three components that we added to make our coding panel more inclusive. So our analysis revealed that one, dynamic and mobility exercises comprised a majority of the warm-up exercises both male and female teams performed. And two, agility and balance were the least commonly performed NMT components, and aerobic exercises were actually the most common NMT components. We also found out that as female athletes were progressing to higher levels of competition, the average time that the teams were devoting to NMT components was increasing exponentially. However, even at the highest level of competition within this study, the time devoted to NMT components only comprised half the total time teams were spent doing warm-ups. Now, there were some limitations to our study. One was the small number of teams that we recruited. Two was that only one warm-up session was recorded for each team. And three was the potential for participant bias because these athletes were aware that we were recording them. Now, future directions include the data for this study being used to guide the development of the Shred Field Hockey specific NMT program. This will be followed by implementation through coach workshops and then evaluation during the 2023 outdoor season. In conclusion, we want to state that though the time devoted to NMT components increases with the level of competition, NMT exercises still only comprise a fraction of youth warm-up sessions. And eliminating dynamic and mobility and instead introducing balance and agility exercises will be a key aspect of the field hockey specific NMT program that is currently being designed. Here are my references, and thank you so much for listening to my presentation.